music, true music, not just rock and roll, it chooses you. It lives in your car or alone, listen to your headphones.
There used to be a way to stick it to the man. It was called rock and roll. But guess what? Oh no, the man ruined that too with a little thing called MTV.
Don't talk to me about rock and roll. I'm out there in the clubs and on the streets and I'm living it. I am rock and roll.
Did I listen to pop music because I was miserable? Or was I miserable because I listened to pop music?
Sounds like when you're saying it, it's like a word that
Phantom Anthem.
Phantom Anthem. Like it's
Say it
supposed to be.
enough times, it doesn't
It's
make
like
sense.
it's supposed to be something else. Phantom Anthem. I'm not sure though. We're talking about August Burns Red, their latest album, Phantom Anthem.
Yes.
That was your recommendation.
It was
Jordan.
mine. Yeah, you started with the metal, and I decided to
And you
continue
followed
that
with
trend.
the metal.
Yeah.
There's a very. I was noticing before we get into the album. Okay, if I were to describe myself as, and I was thinking about this earlier, as like what kind of music I listen to. Generally, it's like my favorite stuff that I'm drawn to. I listen to all sorts of music, but most consistently is like emo pop punk. So it's funny to me that the first album I suggested it's listed as metal. There are definitely metal elements, The Contortionist, Clairvoyant, but I have a hard time strictly calling that album a metal album. This one, August Burns Red, Phantom Anthem, is for sure like it's metal.
It's metal.
But it's the kind of metal that I back in the day when I was into it. I did have a season where I listened to this kind of stuff. I would have classified it as like hardcore.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's a term that's like
Yeah, well, and I always
no
found it
longer
funny
existent.
how you described metal, because even, like back in when I was 16,
Yeah.
17, 18, it was like, metalcore, new metal.
Right.
Like, it was, whatever it was, I think, like, people like Apple Music just don't know what to describe it as. It's like,
Right.
this is metal.
Yeah. And I mean, this, I would definitely, this album, I would definitely say is more metal than Clairvoyant by The Contortionist.
For sure.
I think, again, we're not going to talk about The Contortionist for long. This is just because I have listened to that album a number of times now since then, and I do really like it. It's not an album that I want to put on all the time. I think it was out of 9. I think I gave it a 5 out of 9 last week.
Yeah, that was pretty generous.
I think I might give it a 5.5 now.
Wow.
Yeah, I've since made it past track 4. I almost texted you when I made it past track 4. I was like, dude, I've done it. I'm still going. Okay, but let's.
Well, good on you. I didn't listen to it ever again, so
that's fair. Well, you deleted it as we were talking. Okay, so this album, Phantom Planet by August Burns Red, came out last year. It is their latest. It's 11 tracks of assault.
That's a good way to describe it.
This was so. With this album, I took a few notes on a couple songs because there were parts that I did like, and there were some parts that I really liked.
Yeah.
Overall, I just felt like it didn't stop, and I think that's like my biggest problem with listening to music like this.
Yeah.
Is I'm like, to hear a song, sure, because like I don't know if there's music out there that's going to get you like more pumped up than something like this. We're just like, yeah. I like to call it mean mugging. I'm like driving down the road listening to this album, and I'm just like mean mugging, right? Like, and it does make me want to like break out into like it gets me to move more than say like listening to a pop punk, like just sitting in my chair. Like when a breakdown hits or whatever, I'm like, you can't help but kind of move along with it. I'm not talking about headbanging or whatever, but I'm talking about full on hardcore dancing in traffic.
Yeah. Well, of course, right in the middle.
But yeah, like as far as like an album as a whole and this kind of music, so it's hard for me to like look at this critically from someone who completely understands this genre, because I don't.
Yeah.
There are definitely elements I enjoy. I like going to live shows for this, mainly to watch the pit, right, and see what kind of action is going on there.
Yeah, that's always fun, and that's what I find with metal too. Is it like kind of what I said on the last podcast, I can listen to it, but you got to turn it off after a certain point because
Right.
it is all the same.
Yeah.
But for the 2, 3, 4 songs in a row,
Right.
you jam pretty hard.
And so I found myself on this album continually, and just for fun sometimes, I'd come back to the song The Frost. That's track 3 on the album. And because I think, like, my first thought was, holy smokes, this guitar intro is awesome. And then as I was listening to it, and you're going to have to go back and listen to this, and maybe you thought this, the intro of the album, or not of the album, of that song, The Frost, reminds me so much of a Blink-182 song.
Which, really?
So, you know, it's like...
Which one?
Well, so the intro is just like like it's just like
Yeah.
this kind of clean guitar.
Yeah, yeah.
But I can't remember I'd have to look up the name. It's off of Take Off Your Pants, and it's the last song. It's the one's like, oh no, it happened again.
She's cool, she's hot, she's my
Yeah.
friend.
So like, if you listen to the intro of The Frost, that's exactly what you're gonna hear.
Oh,
And now
I
it's
did
going to
not
ruin
think
it
of
for you.
that at all.
It doesn't last long because then they kind of go into some more like minor sounding like chords or whatever, and it takes on a bit of a different vibe. But the guitar work in that intro, just like the different pieces, and then there's a kind of a bit of a breakdown, not like a like a hardcore breakdown, but like a dynamic change, and the guitar part changes again, and he's kind of. I just really like the guitar work in that song.
Yeah, well, that's why I love this band too. Like, they've been around forever.
Oh, yeah.
It's a staple, right? Like everybody's heard of August Burns Red.
Yeah.
If you're in the metal scene, but they're such a technical band.
Yeah.
Which I love, and the Contortionists were that
Yeah.
as well. But I think August Burns Red is just above and beyond.
I feel and because you're like, I mean, that's obviously one thing that metal is kind of known for, being technical. I mean, sure, there are probably some bands and maybe subgenres of metal that are a little less techy, I guess. With the Contortionist, I found like their tech was more, like I said, like time signature changes and just like getting kind of weird.
Yeah.
Whereas August Burns Red and that kind of subgenre of metal, and most metal maybe, is like a lot more consistent, I suppose. And maybe that's where I like when I'm listening to it, I kind of feel like, it's assaulting my senses, right?
Yeah.
Like, because it's just like that kick drum just goes for the whole thing, right?
Trainer.
Yeah, and it's just like when you're listening to it, especially on headphones, maybe it's different if I were to just like put it on the stereo and crank it. Most of the time, for this kind of stuff, I'm listening on headphones, and it's just like, it's all I hear.
The thing, yeah, totally. And the thing I like about August Burns Red is, especially on their last 2 albums, I don't know if you listened to their previous one, but
it depends how far back it came out, because it had been a while since I listened to August Burns
yeah,
Red.
it was only a couple years.
Yeah.
But what they kind of started to do is they'd go like full tilt, going hard, and then they'd like just slow it right down.
Right.
And there's been a couple different songs where they've done that on the last 2 albums, where they just slow it right down and kind of do almost like an acoustic little break in there, which I thought that's awesome, because that actually that does give your ears a little bit of a
right. And
breather.
there were a couple songs where I noted sort of like some neat dynamic changes. So the song Generations, which is track, I'm not prepared for this. Track 8. There's like I noted it was almost like a country-like breakdown. It was so weird and caught me off guard, and I was like,
well, I know.
But it was kind of cool. And then I think it's the next song, Float. The bridge is really great. But the one thing that would sell me maybe on August Burns Red and bands like it, and maybe this is just I don't know, like is if they had like a singer. There is one song where they have and I don't know who it is, but he's kind of singing, but at the same point, and then I was like, I don't.
On this album?
Yeah,
it's just Jake.
Yeah, and
So
it's like it's fine, but I'm like, I wish it would, like, there was someone who came in, and I was gonna say earlier, it's funny that being a guy who listens mostly to like emo pop punk or it's funny because the next album that we're gonna review, there's a very good chance it's another metal album, because the new Under Oath album.
Yeah,
as we're recording this, the new Under Oath album comes out tomorrow. The only problem is that the new Wonder Years album also comes out tomorrow, which I've listened to a lot already. So we'll see which one comes next. But that's a heads up. Maybe we'll do a double dose. We'll like review both and then we'll pick which one we think is better. Because those are two heavy-hitting releases to come out on the same day. Under Oath, especially because it's been almost 10 years since they've had new music.
Yeah, well, Under Oath is, that's going to be a big one. Everyone's excited about.
Yeah, and the thing about that album, or that band, I should say, is I lost interest in them, and maybe this sounds kind of like, oh, it's so typical, but I lost interest in them when Aaron left specifically. Yeah. Like, mind you, I probably had lost interest maybe in an album before that, but that band, for instance, I absolutely loved. And they started getting heavier over the years, and now I think it seems like the stuff I've heard and the reviews I'm hearing, like their new album's going to be quite heavy, but it still has like when those vocals, those strong vocals cut through, or different bands like that, right? Like with a strong that's what then I can like latch onto, because I really like melody. Yeah, well, and speaking of Under, they've influenced a lot of for sure
the metal bands that are still out today, and I think even Augsburg's Red would attest to that. But yeah, like there's some songs on this new album where Jake does kind of expand from just screaming into a little bit of singing, but that's kind of never been their forte.
Yeah, no, and that's one thing for sure. Like listening to them in the past, I want to say, probably 10 plus years ago, like that I would have been listening to them, and well, maybe not 10 plus, probably 10 years ago.
2008.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. It might have been. I know I was listening to them in college, and I was going to college. I was 2007 to 2009. Okay. So, but yeah, I know like they were never a band that had a singer, and there is something I think a little like, I guess maybe cliche about that, and like just going, I just wish they had a singer, because there was a time where there were so many bands that just like exploded that's what they were doing, right? And but again, like it's you talk about kind of like the instrumental breakdown sort of things that come up with August Burns Red, where they kind of dial it down. So just like that sort of dynamic thing, and they do that. But yeah, I think it's because when I'm like driving in the car, I just want that part to come in where I'm just like going to sing along, right? Like there were bits where I find in this style of music too, is like lyrically where it gets a little soft, I suppose, where I'm just like, what are you even? And I say that being fully self-aware that I listen to some music that's probably just like people would cringe, right? Like when they dig into the lyrics, like and then some where I think people might go, oh, that's actually really good. But I think because like and I could be entirely completely wrong with this, but when a guy is screaming, I think maybe they can get away with just like saying whatever. Yeah. Because it's more about just like that, okay, the way I deliver this scream, you're hardly going to understand what I'm saying anyways. It's more about how I'm delivering it that you're going to be like, yes! And, the crowd's going to dig into it. But at the same point, I've listened to some hardcore bands, or whatever you want to call them, and like lyrically, when you can understand, I'm just like, yeah. Like you want to, like there's a reason guys come to the front at those shows and they're like, like whether they're throwing horns in the air or fist in the air, they're screaming along every word, right? Like there's a lot of passion to it. So sometimes I just think when I read the lyrics, I'm like, okay. And August Burns Red, I was scrolling through a little bit and I was kind of like, there were parts where I was like, that's actually good. And then other parts where I was like, eh.
And see, that's what I'm learning about you, is you're a lyrics guy. You're a lyrics guy, and I've never really paid much attention to them unless they catch me. Like, I never really look them up. But yeah, that's definitely something that you're always looking for.
Which is, I mean, if I like, on Apple Music, not on everything, but I can go in and like as I'm listening on my phone, if you like go full screen and scroll up, the lyrics will be there. I'll like follow along. And I think sometimes I find it hilarious when I'm like, that's clearly not what the song's saying, because I know you can also go in and like add your lyrics to it. So I don't know if that then like where they're accessing, and so if that just goes across the board, if there's no lyrics there, then I add them in. If they're like, oh, check, that's good. Now everyone's got those lyrics. But yeah, like I am and I'm not. Like I that can catch me, and I guess sometimes it catches me more. Like there are some songwriters or bands who I listen to specifically because of the song, like lyric writing, right? I mean, at the same point, the music still has to catch me. So I think a lot of times it's more I'm like, and like a total package sort of thing where I'm like, I need to like the music as well, the lyrics, but sometimes I will pay closer attention. And I brought up the Wonder Years. They're a band, and I'm slowly trying to convince you, because I know you're kind of like, Wonder Years.
Yeah, I'm very indifferent on that.
Yeah, but when I read their lyrics, and I'm sure there are people too who are like, they literally did 3 albums that were about living in like suburban living, right?
Yeah.
Like it was. I'm sure there are some people who are like, why is he writing about that all the time? But the way like Dan Campbell like paints pictures with his words is more like where I go with him. So I'm interested to see when you listen to their new album, because he's kind of branched out a little bit. But I know musically you'll kind of probably. You might struggle with parts on that album, but maybe not.
Maybe not.
Maybe not, because I'm just gonna keep.
You've won me over on some
I'm gonna
bands,
keep pushing
man.
you. Yeah, like I know how much you love the Contortionist now.
So much, so much. Yeah, so good.
So, but you're right. Like I do enjoy lyrics and good lyrics.
Yeah.
But at the same point, I mean, I also grew up loving and listening to Blink-182. They're not exactly known as being
Great
expert
lyricists.
songsmiths. Yeah, like the poetic, laureate of our generation or whatever, right? Like
it depends what your standard is, I guess.
I guess, but I mean, they just always wrote fun songs, and sometimes those lyrics were just, I could get it because they're funny, right? Like, so I mean, there's different layers to it, I suppose, but yeah, I do find sometimes with hardcore, it's just like I just feel, or metal, whatever. And maybe it's because like when you get into like when you further dive into metal, they can start getting into some imagery that I'm just like, I really don't care.
Yeah.
Like whether it's sort of like fantastical stuff or super dark imagery.
Yeah.
I'm like, neither way. I like grasping on to like I guess like your typical human emotions, whether it's love is obviously a big one, or like anger, or like hope. It's just different things like that to kind of dig into versus, I don't think that
you'd like Being as an Ocean. I don't know if you listen to them, but they're
put them on the list.
Okay, they'll be on the list.
Is this just going to turn it? This is just going to turn into
they're
a metal
podcast.
So. Apologies to any of you who are hoping to hear something else, but it's just metal from here on out. But yeah, I was going to say it. It doesn't have to be a true story either. Like I don't need someone to be like pouring their actual heart out, But if the stories and the characters they're creating are human, then I've tried to get into bands like Coheed and Cambria, and like musically sometimes I'm like they're pretty fun, they're a little different than what I'd normally listen to. But I'm like, I don't get anything out of the lyrics at all. I'm like, and like they did like there was like 7 or 8 albums that was telling one story. Like their last album that came out, I don't know if it was last year it came out or when, but it's the first album that's outside of that entire universe. And I'm like, that's incredible to me, but also crazy. I'm like, and they often release stuff, and I think maybe it was every one of their albums were always accompanied by like graphic novels and whatever. So I'm like, that's kind of neat.
Yeah.
Like that's a different experience. But again, like lyrically, I'm like, I just couldn't quite get into it. And so like August Burns Red, at least I find like, I don't find that they're like painting those pictures like where they're like getting crazy with their lyrics or whatever.
Right.
They're, I think, tapping into that raw human emotion. It's just sometimes I was like, there were parts where I was like, that's the line you went with?
Yeah.
But then there were parts where I was like, oh, that's actually kind of cool. Like it was give and take.
I think they've, like, this album, I would say this is probably my favorite August Burns Red album.
And that's always,
released.
because they've been around for a while.
Long time.
So for a band to like be, like, well, let's say, I don't know when they started, but it's 2008. Let's say they've been going for
at least 10 years.
Yeah, 10 to 15 years. And for them to be releasing what you're finding to be their best album at that point is pretty awesome, because I find a lot of times with bands, it's like, okay, maybe the first album knocks it out of the park, but generally it's kind of like the first album's like, well, that's good. And then the next album, is like when they really start going, and then they just kind of start going downhill and just kind of getting boring.
Yeah, that's normally the trend.
Yeah, and so like that's pretty great that you're, as a fan who's been listening for a while, able to at this point say this is my favorite August Burns Red album.
Yeah, and I love it. I think this one is like super high energy. I think they're first few albums were really, really high energy, breakdowns. It's just going nuts. Then in the middle, they kind of like, it just like they were getting more creative, and there was some heavy stuff still, but they were getting a little more creative. Yeah. I think on this album, they found like the perfect combination of creativity, but also this one just like rages pretty hard.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so there's 11 tracks on the album.
11.
So you got to rate it out of 11. What do you give this album?
Okay. Honestly, I would, out of 11, I'd give this 10.
Wow.
10.
Wow.
I love this album.
Well,
I think
fair.
this is the best they've done, and like I always go to their shows when they come to do it. It's always a good time. They played most of this album.
That's cool.
On their most recent show, and the crowd was just like going nuts.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I did 10 out of 11. That's
a testament to them.
Yeah.
So out of 11, like, so I really, really liked, and like I said, I would just go back to it for fun and just like put it on. But the Frost, I really liked. The rest of the album, kind of outside of parts here and there, I don't think there was ever a song where I was like, okay, skip. But part of that could be because they all sound very similar. And so I was like, okay, I know what I'm in for, obviously. Out of 11, I think I'd go out of my way. I'd probably give it, let's say, a 6.
Really?
Yeah.
So you're saying that this album, in your mind, is almost as good as the Contortionist album? Because that's kind of the same grade you gave that.
Kind of. I mean, I gave the Contortionist. I just bumped it to 5.5 out of 9.
Yeah.
But here's the thing with the Okay, if I'm going to compare those two albums, because somehow, some way, they're both metal albums. The Contortionist, I find there's enough variance in what's going on, and again, I get attracted to melody. So the fact that he's singing in the Contortionist helps me.
Yeah. Okay.
Here's the weird thing, though. I may be more likely to put this on than the Contortionist. The Contortionist, Clairvoyant, is more work to listen to.
Yeah.
I also always skip the first track because I'm just like, I just want to get into the meat of this album. And the first track, the first half, I want to say roughly, I don't like. The second half is fine, but I'm just like, whatever. I'll just go to track 2. So like, I would potentially say, yeah, like this is easier for me to listen to, but also maybe less enjoyable.
So if August Burns Red had like a killer singer in their band, this would be the ultimate for you.
Well, it wouldn't be the ultimate.
It
would definitely raise that album.
Okay.
Like,
that's fair.
I mean, I also want to like hold back because I mean, the grading system that's going to change per album depending on number of songs. You're probably doing it the better way. I'm swinging. But I mean, but this is an album you knew you liked coming in, right? So there are going to be albums that I'm like, oh, I know I like this album. Yeah. And I'm recommending it because I really like it. So I would say if they did have like a singer, it would definitely bump that up. 6 out of 11. So. Because I didn't want to, I don't want it to just. I mean,
it's hardly a pass, man.
Yeah, it might be a 5.5. Like I want it to pass, right? Coming from the guy who gave Clairvoyant 2 out of 9.
I'm swinging hard both ways.
That's fine. I want it to pass. Because there's nothing wrong with it. Again, it's just kind of like I feel after listening to like this for a period, I'm just like I just feel like someone's been like punching me repeatedly in the face.
Yeah, but then it makes you want to like go work out or something. Like you're ready to do something productive now.
Maybe. I mean, I listen to podcasts when I work out.
Really?
Okay. Sometimes it's nice to. It makes the time go by quicker. Like struggling, like well, at least this is entertaining to listen to. Yeah. But yeah, like so 5.5 to 6, I would say, which is definitely like I would put it on again, and I wouldn't be surprised to come back to the Frost because, like I said, there were just points in that song where I was like, "This is awesome."
That's really interesting because a lot of people do like the Frost. That's probably that's not in my top 5 songs on that album.
Well, it is one of the few on the album that's got like on Apple Music that's got a little star beside it. So I was like, oh,
yeah. Obviously, they thought that was going to do well, and it's
I want to know how the star system works on Apple Music.
I think they decide which are going to be like the singles.
Like Apple Music, because I've gone to albums where it's like some unknown artist and it's all stars.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I'm like, Is this like, I feel like it's got to be like,
I don't know who's doing it.
yeah, neither do I. I just wonder if it's like either like people have to, because you can rate songs, right?
Yeah.
Or like love it or whatever. So I wonder if it's like, it's got to be tied into that,
Maybe.
or number of times it's been played, like whatever. But then like the unknown artist who's like got like a 7-song EP and 5 of them are stars. Well, I'm pretty sure
These are
that's
the 5
skewed.
good ones.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
skewed. But yeah, so August Burns Red.
Okay.
What was it called? I was going to call it Phantom Planet.
Phantom Anthem.
Phantom Anthem. Phantom Planet, by the way, is the band who did the theme music for the OC.
Okay, yeah, different band.
California, here we come. Where's August Burns Red from? Are they from California?
No, I think they're from like Minnesota.
Oh yeah, sounds like a Minnesota sound. He's wearing a nice shirt.
I could be
though.
wrong.
I like that shirt he's wearing on Apple. I'm assuming it's a singer.
Jake?
It's like yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Button-up shirt with dots all over it. It's cool. It's cool.
Yeah, man, they're a cool band. Actually, you know what? Quick funny story before we wrap this. I've been to pretty much every show they play in Edmonton.
Yeah.
And they.
By the way, this podcast is based out of Edmonton.
Yeah, if you didn't know. So they were playing a show downtown, and I was a little early, so I thought I'd like go get a bite to eat at Walkbox. Walk into Walkbox, order my food,
There
sit
they are.
down. I'm sitting next to Matt Grainer, the drummer,
Oh, yeah.
and I was just like, "Hey, man," and he was just like, "Hey, how's it going?" We just like chatted for a bit. I got a picture with him, and
That's
then
funny.
he ripped the show up. And
Oh,
a
there you
couple
go.
hours later, I was like, "Yeah." So that's my one encounter.
Were you
with
wondering
one member?
wondering the whole time if he had an upset stomach because he just ate Walkbox?
Yeah.
You're like that.
like,
Sometimes
is
that
this
doesn't sit
wise?
well. Yeah, yeah.
Like you're gonna drum pretty hard. but-
There you go. So yeah, August Burns Red, Phantom Anthem. Jordan loves it.
I do.
I think it's all right.
Well, fair enough.